The first time I realized my friend's mom wanted me, she was standing beside a coffee machine, arguing with it under her breath. It was such an ordinary thing that I almost laughed. I was 24 and by then I had become pretty good at ordinary work, rent, groceries, coffee before 9, going home without checking whether anyone had texted, then checking anyway. Her name was Claire, 46, divorced. She lived 2 houses down from me and she was also my friend Daniel's mom, which was the part that made everything complicated before anything had even happened. I had known her for years in the harmless way you know a friend's parent. Hello in the driveway. How, work? Daniel said you were looking for a new apartment, nothing worth remembering. Then Daniel moved across town. Claire didn't. And somehow after that, I started seeing her more. Not because we planned to. Just small things. She'd be outside bringing in groceries when I came home. I'd hold the gate open, she'd ask if I wanted coffee. The coffee became a habit before either of us admitted it was one. That morning, she slid a mug across the counter without asking. Black. I looked at it. You remembered. She shrugged, you always drink it like you're being punished. I laughed before I could stop myself. She smiled, but only for a second. Then her fingers went back to folding the corner of a paper napkin into smaller and smaller squares. I noticed her hands. I don't know why. Maybe because I had started noticing things I wasn't supposed to. The way she pushed her hair behind one ear when she was thinking, the little pause before she answered personal questions, the way she sometimes looked at me and then seemed to remember who I was. Daniel's friend. 24. Her son's friend. There were boundaries everywhere, even when nobody said the word. And still something had changed. I could feel it in the quiet moments. Once I caught her looking at me through the kitchen window, not staring exactly, more like she'd forgotten to look away. When our eyes met, she lowered hers. Neither of us mentioned it. That was probably the beginning. Or maybe the beginning had happened earlier, when she remembered how I took my coffee. I was lonely back then, although I wouldn't have called it that. I had a phone full of conversations I never started. A message to my old college roommate sat unsent for 3 weeks because I couldn't think of a normal way to say, "Hey, how have you been?" Most nights I'd type something, read it twice, and lock the screen. Claire somehow made those silences feel less empty. That scared me more than attraction did. Because attraction could be ignored. Being understood was harder. A few days later, I stopped by her house to return a book Daniel had accidentally left at my place months earlier. Claire opened the door wearing a loose sweater, holding a thermos in one hand. "You're leaving already?" she asked. "I just came to return this." She looked at the book. Then at me. "Right." There was a pause. A strange one. Not uncomfortable. Worse. Familiar. I started to say goodnight, but she spoke first. "Wait." I turned. She looked down at the thermos, then back at me. "I need to tell you something." I waited. She didn't say it. Instead, she smiled faintly and said, "Actually, forget it." I went home wondering what she had almost said. At 12:17 that night, my phone lit up on the table. One new voicemail. From Claire. And before I pressed play, I already knew that whatever came next was going to change the way I looked at her forever. I listened to the voicemail twice before I understood that she hadn't actually said anything she couldn't take back. Her voice was quiet. "Sorry for calling so late, I wanted to say thank you for today and don't make this weird, okay?" Then a small breath. "Good night." That was it. I stared at the screen for a long time. There were probably 100 harmless explanations. She was tired, she'd had a difficult day, maybe she'd been lonely and reached for the nearest familiar person. I almost texted her. Instead, I put my phone face down. The next afternoon, I found her in the backyard trying to fix a loose section of fence. "You know you're holding that upside down," I said. She looked at the screwdriver. Then at me. "I was testing you." "Sure. I was. You looked very convincing." She gave me that half smile again. "Help me." So I did. We spent 20 minutes kneeling in the grass, passing tools back and forth, Nothing happened, that was the strange part. Nothing needed to. She told me her father had taught her how to repair things when she was a teenager. He used to say if you can fix something yourself, you should. And did it work? Sometimes. She tightened a screw. Sometimes you just make the damage less obvious. I looked at her. She kept working. I knew she wasn't talking about the fence. Maybe she knew I knew. Neither of us said anything. Later she made tea. We sat on opposite ends of the kitchen table while rain tapped softly against the windows. Her wedding ring was long gone, but there was still a pale line on her finger where it had been. I found myself looking at it. She noticed. My divorce took 2 years, she said. I didn't know. Most people didn't. She wrapped both hands around her mug. He wasn't a bad man, that almost made it harder. I didn't know what to say. So I said the first honest thing that came to me. That sounds lonely. She looked up. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she nodded. It was. Something shifted in me. Because suddenly Claire wasn't Daniel's mom. She was just a woman sitting across from me, carrying around years I knew almost nothing about. And I wasn't just Daniel's friend either. I was a 24-year-old man sitting there wondering why I wanted her to keep looking at me that way. That thought made me sit back. There were things I could imagine in private that I would never allow myself to say aloud. Her hand reaching across the table. Her asking me to stay. Me staying. I hated how easily my mind filled in the silence. When I stood to leave, she walked me to the door. Thanks for helping. Anytime. She reached up and brushed a tiny piece of sawdust from my shoulder. Her fingers stopped there for half a second. Then she pulled her hand away. Sorry. It's fine. She looked at me. No, I meaned. She didn't finish. Neither did I. I left with the rain still falling and her doorway glowing behind me. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because, for one brief second, it felt like someone had seen me, not as Daniel's friend, not as the younger man next door, but as myself. And once someone sees you that clearly, pretending you don't want to be seen again becomes almost impossible. After that night, Claire changed the way she answered the door. Not dramatically. She still smiled, still asked about work, still offered coffee when I stopped by. But she stopped touching me. That was how I noticed. Before, there had been little things she probably didn't even think about. A hand on my shoulder, fingers brushing mine when she passed a mug, standing too close while looking for something in a drawer. Now there was always space. A chair between us. A doorway. Sometimes an entire room. I told myself it was better that way. It was. Probably. Then Daniel came over one Saturday. We were in Claire's kitchen helping her move a cabinet she'd bought secondhand. Daniel was complaining about the instructions while I held the door steady. You two look like you've done this before, he said. Claire glanced at me. Unfortunately. I laughed. Daniel didn't. His eyes moved between us for a second too long. You guys hang out a lot. The screwdriver in my hand suddenly felt heavier. Claire answered before I could. He helps sometimes. Right. Daniel opened the refrigerator. The conversation moved on. Mine didn't. I kept thinking about that one word. Right. After Daniel left, I offered to finish tightening the cabinet. You don't have to, Claire said. I know. She watched me for a moment. Then she looked away. You should probably go. I stopped turning the screwdriver. Did I do something? No. You're acting like I did. She folded a dish towel. Once. Twice. I don't know what I'm doing. I waited. She sighed. That doesn't mean you have to know either. I know. No, you don't. Her voice wasn't angry. That made it worse. She put the towel down. You're 24. I know how old I am. And I know. She gave a quiet, almost embarrassed laugh. Of course you do. The kitchen went silent. Outside, a car passed slowly over the wet street. I wanted to say something that would make everything simple. There wasn't anything. So I said, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. She looked at me. I don't. Then what? Her eyes dropped to the counter. I don't want to become something you regret. That stayed between us. I stepped closer without meaning to. She didn't move away. One step. Then another. Close enough that I could hear her breathing. She looked up at me. There was no smile now. No joke to hide behind. I shouldn't, she whispered. I nodded. I know. Neither of us moved. Her hand rested against the edge of the counter, mine was beside it. For 1 second our fingers almost touched. Then she looked at my mouth. I saw it. She knew I saw it. And somehow that was more intimate than anything either of us had said. Please go, she whispered. I swallowed. Okay. I turned toward the door. Behind me, I heard her take a breath like she was trying to steady herself. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. There were words sitting right there. 3 or 4 of them. Simple ones. Dangerous ones. I almost turned around. Almost. Instead, I opened the door and stepped outside. And for the first time, I understood that wanting someone wasn't always about getting closer. Sometimes it was standing at the exact place where you could cross the line, and realizing neither of you trusted what would happen afterward. For almost 2 weeks, I stopped going to Claire's house. I told myself it was respect. Really, I was trying to prove that I could walk away. Then Daniel mentioned, casually, that his mom had started taking evening walks. She's been weird lately, he said. You know if something's wrong. I looked at him. No. The lie came too easily. That evening, I saw Claire sitting alone on a bench near the small park behind our street. I almost kept walking. She noticed me anyway. You've been avoiding me. I stopped. I thought you wanted space. I did. She looked down at her hands. I didn't say I wanted you gone. I sat beside her, leaving enough room between us to make the distance obvious. For a while neither of us spoke. Children were playing near the swings. Somewhere behind us a dog barked twice and then stopped. Claire watched the pavement. I saw you with someone yesterday. I turned toward her. What? At the coffee place. It took me a second. Oh, the coworker. I know. Then why? I don't know. She rubbed her thumb along the edge of her sleeve. I didn't like it. The honesty in her voice made me look away. She gave a small embarrassed laugh. That's ridiculous. Maybe. Don't agree so quickly. I smiled. She didn't. I haven't felt like this in a long time, she said. I waited. She swallowed. And I don't know if that's a good thing. The wind moved through the trees. I could hear the faint scrape of her shoe against the pavement. You don't have to explain. I think I do. She looked at me then. I spent years being careful about what people thought, careful about my marriage, careful after the divorce, careful with Daniel. Her voice softened. And now you walk into my kitchen, drink terrible coffee, and somehow I forget to be careful. I didn't know where to put my hands. So I kept them together. I didn't mean to do that. I know. She looked away. That might be the problems. A long silence followed. Then I said, I think about you too. Her eyes closed for a second. Not relief. Something more complicated. When she opened them, they were wet. I was hoping you wouldn't say that. Why? Because then I can't pretend I'm imagining it. She turned toward me. We were closer now. Not much. Just enough. I don't want you to become a secret, she said. I frowned. What does that mean? I don't know yet. Her voice almost broke on the last word. She reached for my hand. Stopped. Her fingers hovered between us. Then she lowered them. I just know that if I touch you, I might not stop. Neither of us moved. The park seemed suddenly too quiet. She looked at me and I could see the question she wasn't asking. I could feel my own answer sitting somewhere behind my ribs. And for one suspended moment, we stayed there, close enough to change everything, still far enough to pretend we hadn't. Then Claire whispered, what happens if I stop being afraid? The next morning, Claire left a note on my door. Not a message. Not a call. A note. My name was written across the front in her handwriting. I stood there for almost a minute before opening it. Inside were 6 words. We need to put this away. That was all. No explanation. No goodbye. Just 6 words that somehow made the hallway feel colder. I didn't go to her house. I didn't text. For 3 days, I did exactly what she had asked. Then Daniel called. Can you come over? His voice sounded different. I found him sitting on his mother's porch when I arrived. He looked tired. Mom told me something. I waited. She said you two have been spending time together. My stomach tightened. Sometimes. Daniel looked down at his shoes. She said nothing happened. I didn't answer. He rubbed his forehead. I believe her. That surprised me. Then he added, but I also know my mom. I looked toward the house. The curtains were closed. She hasn't been herself lately. Is she okay? Daniel gave me a strange look. That's what I was going to ask you. I didn't know what to say. He leaned back. After Dad left, she stopped letting anyone get close, not even me sometimes. I remembered Claire sitting at the kitchen table, turning a napkin between her fingers. She told me once, he continued, that the worst part wasn't the divorce. It was realizing she'd spent years making herself smaller so everyone else could stay comfortable. He paused. She doesn't want to do that again. I nodded slowly. So why is she pushing me away? Daniel looked at me. I don't know. Neither did I. That evening I saw Claire through her kitchen window. She was standing at the counter. Alone. She noticed me on the sidewalk. For 1 second her expression changed. Her hand lifted slightly, almost a wave. Then she stopped herself. The curtain closed. That hurt more than the note. The following week became a collection of almosts. I almost knocked on her door. She almost called. I saw her car outside the grocery store and almost walked over. Instead I kept going. Then on Friday, I received a message from her. Can we talk tomorrow? I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed *yes whenever you want. I deleted it. Typed *OK. Deleted that too. Finally I wrote. I don't want you to disappear just because this is difficult. I read it once. Then again. I couldn't make myself send it. Across the street, Claire's porch light came on. I watched it through my window. Her front door opened. She stepped outside and stood there for a moment, looking toward my house. I stayed behind the curtain. She waited. I waited. Neither of us moved. Eventually she went back inside. The message remained on my phone. Unsent. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life had forgotten to finish the sentence, and neither of us was brave enough to write the next word. I sent the message the next morning. Not because I suddenly became brave. I was just tired of carrying around a sentence that belonged somewhere outside my phone. I don't want you to disappear just because this is difficult. Claire read it almost immediately. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then her reply came. Come over tonight. At 7, I stood outside her door longer than I should have. When she opened it, she looked tired. Not sad. Just tired in the way people look when they've spent too many nights arguing with themselves. Hi, she said. Hi. She stepped aside. The kitchen looked exactly the same. The same table. The same chipped mug near the sink. The same thermos sitting beside the coffee machine. That almost made it harder. She poured coffee into 2 cups. Neither of us drank. I was going to tell you something that night at the park, she said. I waited. I stopped myself because I thought I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. She looked down. Probably both. I sat across from her. She folded her hands together. My ex-husband called. I hadn't expected that. He wants to try again, she said. I stared at the table. And I said no. She looked at me. I didn't say no because of you. I nodded. I said no because I finally understood that being lonely isn't the same as being wrong. The room went quiet. She took a breath. But then I thought about what was happening between us and I got scared. Because I'm Daniel's friend. That. She paused. Your age. That too. And because if this goes badly, I lose more than a relationship. I lose the easy life I had with you, the coffee, the stupid fence, you showing up without needing a reason. I looked at her hands. You don't have to lose that. She smiled faintly. I know. Another pause. Then she said, but I can't keep pretending I don't want more. There it was. Quiet. Almost ordinary. Still, it changed the room. I looked at her. I want more too. She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, there was no uncertainty in the way she'd been looking at me before. There was fear. But she stayed. I don't know what happens after this, she said. Neither do I. Daniel might be angry. He might. People might talk. They probably will. She gave a tired little laugh. That's not very reassuring. No. She laughed again. This time I did too. The tension loosened. Not completely. Just enough to breathe. She reached across the table. Her hand stopped beside mine. She waited. I turned my palm upward. Her fingers settled into it. Nothing dramatic happened. No music. No perfect words. Just her hand in mine, warm and slightly trembling. She looked down at our hands. Then back at me. Okay, she asked. I nodded. Okay. She smiled. And for the first time, neither of us looked away. 6 months later, I still woke up at 8:47 a.m. Not because I had to. Because Claire had started making coffee at exactly that time. Some routines just happen. Others become yours. Things with Daniel had been awkward at first. He didn't yell, he didn't stop speaking to me, somehow that would have been easier. Instead, he asked questions. A lot of them. One afternoon, he finally said, "Are you serious about her?" I looked at him. Yes. He nodded slowly. Then don't make her regret trusting you. That was all. It wasn't approval exactly. But it was enough. Claire and I didn't rush after that. There were still uncomfortable dinners. Still moments when one of us wondered whether we'd made things unnecessarily complicated. Sometimes she would pull away when people asked questions. Sometimes I'd become too quiet. We learned each other's bad habits before we learned how to stop being afraid of them. She still folded napkins when she was nervous. I still checked my phone without expecting anyone to text. But now sometimes there was a message waiting. Tea. Or, you left your book here again. Once she sent. Black coffee, don't complain. I replied. I never complain. She answered. You absolutely do. That became our joke. Not a romantic one. Just ours. A few months after everything changed, we walked through the park where she'd asked me what would happen if she stopped being afraid. We sat on the same bench. The evening was cool. She looked at me. Do you remember this place? Unfortunately. She laughed. You're still terrible. I've improved. You haven't. We sat quietly. Her shoulder rested against mine. That was enough. There were still things we hadn't figured out. How to explain us to people. How to make room for two very different histories. How to keep choosing each other when ordinary life became ordinary again. But maybe that was what made it real. Love hadn't turned our lives into something easier. It had simply given us someone beside us while we figured things out. One Sunday morning, I came into her kitchen and found 2 mugs waiting. One was tea. The other was black coffee. She looked over her shoulder. 8:47. I checked the clock. 8:46. Early. She shook her head. You're getting predictable. I smiled. She handed me the coffee. Our fingers touched. Neither of us pulled away. There was no confession. No promise. We didn't need one. I had spent a long time thinking the important part of our story was the moment we finally admitted what we wanted. It wasn't. It was everything afterward. The awkward conversations. The uncomfortable silences. The decision to stay. The ordinary mornings. The way she stopped looking over her shoulder whenever I walked into the room. The way I stopped wondering whether I was allowed to be happy. Sometimes love doesn't arrive like an answer. Sometimes it just becomes part of the morning. A cup on the table. A familiar voice from the kitchen. Someone remembering how you take your coffee. And if Claire ever asks what I remember most about the beginning, I don't tell her about the almost kiss. I tell her about the thermos. She always knows what I mean. Maybe that's enough. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?